We've just seen a massive pay-per-view, UFC 305, Dricus Du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya in the main event. Your overall reaction to what went down in Perth last Saturday?
I mean, I guess a little tiny bit of surprise, but not as much as other people. And what I mean by that is, like, for example, yesterday was the Contender Series, and somebody asked Dana White, who of course was not in Australia for
Mm,
UFC 305, so this is the first chance anybody had to get the chance to talk to him, and he had said, Dricus fights like a white guy dances, but it works. Or he had Robert Whitaker. He's like, the guy just runs at you like you stole money from him, but it works.
mm,
And obviously, Robert Whitaker is very familiar with Dricus's game. But what I mean is, there's a lot of people who are like, I saw this in the lead up to the fight. They were like, "Oh, Izzy is tailor made to beat a guy who's a big bruiser who makes a lot of sort of technical
mm,
errors." And on one level, that is obviously true because you just look at who he's beaten. That profiles a guy who he's beaten quite a number of times. But I didn't feel it was the right way to look at this fight. I mean, I was definitely 1 billion% one of these guys heading into the Robert Whitaker fight, and I got mocked by the South African fans quite
mm,
rightly for it. I was like, "Oh, this big ass goofball, he's going to get worked like a summer job." And then, of course, he stops Whitaker, and you're like, "Well, how did that happen?" And that was a huge, huge wake up call for
mm,
me. I realized there is a degree of physicality, functionality, and tenaciousness to Du Plessis' game that is often overlooked because he does these lunging kind of, excuse me, almost knocked over my coffee cup, these lunging kind of off balance blitzes
mm,
and other stuff, weird stuff he throws. But the reality is, dude, just look at the results themselves. So I think there's two major takeaways I would have. One is that, like, this is now Du Plessis' division. Now maybe Sean Strickland will beat him. I'm sure we'll talk about what's next. But, like,
mm,
if you beat Whitaker and Strickland and Izzy back to back to back, and you stop two of those three guys, it's your division. It's your division. And whatever you want to say about the beauty or the technical smoothness of DDP's game, the idea that he's just another middleweight bruiser is so clearly not true. And for those other reasons I mentioned, you can tell there's something more to it. I think the second point that I would make is about Izzy in particular.
mm,
He did not look bad to me. I did not look at him and get the sense, and maybe you feel differently, but
mm,
I didn't get the sense that he was washed. I didn't get the sense that, like, this was like oh man, there was so much ring rust. He looked a little older. I will say that, but it was a decent Izzy. It was a good Izzy, and so the value of the win is high. I think the only takeaway I would have about Izzy is I don't know if he has the same competitive fire anymore, which
mm,
I think is understandable given that he's fought over 100 combat sports professional contests between boxing, kickboxing, and now MMA. And I really wonder if beating Alex Pereira was the last real thing he needed for, I don't know, completeness to his journey, and
mm.
that now he at 35 and with all the success and all the money, he's just not in the same place anymore.